1,000 subscribers. I can hardly believe it. So thank you so much to everyone who's joined our little community here. Not so little anymore, but we're killing it, and I'm having so much fun, and I hope you are too. This video today is sort of the second part of the Air Jordan video from last week, where we'll take a look at some of your favorite Jordans. And for extra triggers, not only is there rain that I'm sort of competing with right now, but I'll be tapping on this Air Force One dupe from Zara. Because I don't actually own any Jordans, or do I must have Nike shoes, but I don't own any Jordans myself. And actually this shoe is the perfect example of why I can't own Jordans. I mean, can you see? Obviously some of this could just be cleaned off, but can you see there's like some dirt along the seams, and the laces are definitely a shade of off-white. I think the laces are actually the biggest giveaway here. Let me tell you a little story. So, if you watched my video from last December, where I talked about all the games I saw in person in 2023, you'll know that I made a little trip to New Jersey and New York, and over the course of like 5-6 days, I saw the Devils in the playoffs, the Knicks in the playoffs, the Yankees, and the Red Bull. I think that's everything for that trip. Well, I landed, this is full of cat hair, I'm just noticing now. I landed in Newark, New Jersey, I think it was on May 9th. And it was really early in the morning. It's like barely an hour flight from where I live. So I took the first plane out. So, first thing you need to know about me is that I love taking public transit. When I travel, I'm slightly fascinated by different cities' public transit systems. So I go everywhere either by foot or by public transit. So I took the bus from the airport to my hotel just to see if I could get an early check-in. And the girl at the counter, she was like really nice about it. She was like, you can get an early check. I think check-in proper was at like 4 p.m. And I was there before 10 a.m. So I had no expectations, but she said, you will be able to get an early check-in, just not this early. Totally fair. But she did take my little carry-on suitcase luggage thing. And I kept my backpack, which had like a book and some goldfish crackers. And I set off to explore. I looked at Google Maps. I'm on foot, right? I look at Google Maps and I see, was it Branch Brook Park? It was about 4 kilometers away, which I think is 2 or 2.5 miles. It's a nice little walk to explore the city and kill some time. It was a beautiful day. And I get there, I get to the park, no problem. It's totally empty except for a couple people who are fishing. Because again, I think, was it a Tuesday morning? It was the middle of a weekday morning, so no one's out in the park. And yeah, absolutely gorgeous out there. I'll put up some pictures that I took that morning. Everything was in bloom. There were some baby geese rocking about. But it's early May, right? So if you live in the Northeast, you know that in early May, the sort of like the melt is still happening, and there's just mud everywhere in parks like these. So I'm very careful, or so I think, about where I step. I avoided the muddy paths, stuck to solid ground, felt pretty confident about it all. Until I take a step that sinks so low into the ground that I think I might have reached hell that morning. Literally, I was in mud, like all the way to my ankles. My socks had mud on them, so. It was that like thick, dark mud, and my foot was completely submerged. So like even just dislodging my foot was its own challenge. If I wasn't a 5-mile walk, no, 5 mile. I'm turning this into a fishing story where like I'm just making it sound worse and worse. No, a 4-kilometer, however many fewer miles that is. I might have abandoned the shoe, but that wasn't happening today. And when I finally freed myself, I still have a good at least 3 hours to go before I can go to my hotel room. So I'm thinking, do I sacrifice my book to clean off this shoe? Thankfully, I was surrounded by nature, so I went off the path a little bit into, it was like all this forested area around the path, and I used some leaves to wipe away a lot of the mud, as much of the mud as I could from the shoe. Thank God it was a weekday and there was no one there to see me like scooping mud off my sneaker while I had like one foot in the air trying not to step on the ground. The baby geese did shame me a little bit, but they're always jerks anyway. So. did what I could, and then I sat on a park bench and read until I figured it was time to try heading over to the hotel. Just snacked on my goldfish cracker. Decided I'd attempted enough walking for that morning. Once I got there to the hotel, by the way, this is the only pair of shoes. Like, I might have had another pair of shoes in my luggage at the hotel. That would have been one thing. But these were the only shoes. I was traveling light. I did have a couple of hours to kill before the Devils game that night. So I did what I could to salvage the shoe in the hotel sink. There was definitely a washcloth that was sacrificed for the cause. And then I went to that Devils game, which I had a really cool single seat for that game, and I just watched them get spanked by the Hurricanes. 6-1 in Game 4 of the playoffs. People were leaving in droves fairly early into the game. It was fascinating. The arena in New Jersey and New York has this like atrium where if you're through security and you're inside of the arena, you can look down at the front gates, and I could just it must have been between the second and the third period, I just stood there and watched the exodus of Devils fans. All this to say, that's not even the point of this video. All this to say, it might not have been a funny travel story if I was wearing Jordans or real Air Force Ones, but with a cheap imitation, turns into a funny travel story. But again, today we are talking about some of your favorite Jordans. And let's start off by talking about the 3 sneakers that came up the most in your comments. And in third place, the third most popular in our community was the Marvin the Martian 7s. Now I was happy to see this because I've always been fond of Marvin the Martian. I was a weird kid and I had a Taz phase and then followed by a Marvin the Martian phase. I also associate the character with Patrick Lallume, who was an Ottawa Senators goalie, and he had one of the best goalie helmets in the history of the NHL. He had Marvin just like right there on his forehead. But this sneaker, the Marvin the Martian 7, was released in 2015. It was part of the sort of 23rd anniversary celebration of the Air Jordan 7. And actually, the Barcelona Knights colorway came out first, like in the spring of that year. people thought that that was the Marvin the Martian because the colors sort of made sense, and that maybe Nike was trying to like avoid trademark issues or get around trademark issues by calling it Barcelona Nights but having a Marvin the Martian colorway. But no, the Marvin came out in August of 2015. It featured a predominantly black leather upper. It had a university red Jumpman on the ankle, and the outsole had this like pattern which was sort of inspired by the spacey aesthetics of Marvin the Martian, and also a fluorescent, almost fluorescent green, lime green pull tab on the back. When it was released, it retailed at $190, and today it hasn't jumped that much in value. It's going for about $200 to $25 USD. All of the prices in this video will be in US dollars. In second place, and this might be my favorite of the three, is the Concord 11s. These originally came out in 1995 and retailed at $125. Now, it's such a popular shoe that Nike has re-released it a few times. 2006, 2011, and 2014 in the lows. And most recently, I think it was re-released in 2018, which was probably the nicest reissue, if you ask me. They retailed at $220. Now these these retros, the re-release from 2018, they bring the patent leather mudguard up a little bit higher than previous re-releases, and they replaced the 23 on the heel with like the 23 that appeared on the previous re-releases with 45, which was the uniform number that Jordan initially wore when he first came out of retirement in 95. So those guys, the 2018 release, they go for almost $400 these days. Whereas the OGs, you're lucky to find a nice pair for $2,500. But the most popular Jordan sneaker in our community is, you probably guessed it, the Chicago ones. Now, we went into some of the history of this specific shoe in the last Jordan video, so I'll have it linked in the description if if you haven't seen it yet. But this shoe, it keeps coming back, probably equally because of its history and also because it's a really nice sneaker. So Nike re-released it in 1994, 2013, and 2015 in like its purest form. Re-released it many more times in slightly altered versions, and most recently was the Lost and Found edition in 2022, which was based on the concept of a classic pair of 85 Jordans that got lost in a store's inventory, in a shop's inventory, and like rediscovered all these years later. So it featured some aged details. It had pre-yellowed accents, a cracked looking leather upper, and even a distressed original packaging, retro packaging. That one, the Lost and Found from 2 years ago, it retailed at $180, and today you can get a pair for around $400. Again, all these numbers are in American dollars. Anyway, speaking of value, the OG Chicago ones retailed at $85. There's even these stories of, because there was so much stock, it was often on sale, which you don't really see with big Jordan releases anymore. And now, Sotheby's, they value it around $32,000. One pair, though, that Jordan actually wore, it sold for $675,000 in 2022. And on that topic, I could only find 2 other pairs of Jordan-worn Jordans that sold for more than that. One was the actual Flu Game shoes. They are signed and they sold for $1.38 million last year. And then the Bread 13s, the Last Dance shoes, which he wore in Game 2 of the 1998 NBA Finals. They're also signed and they sold for $2.2 million last year, which in a way is a lot of money, but at the same time you think, like, if they only went for 2.2, I don't know how to feel about that figure. Anyway, back to your favorite Jordans from the comments. If I added up all of the different colorways of each model that were mentioned, the 4s pop up as the third favorite model, the third favorite silhouette, followed by the 1s, the all-time favorite silhouette for our community is the 11s, which I tend to agree with. But the ones are just a classic shoe, but the 11s, I said this in the last video, but to me they're peak Jordan. I also want to give some shout outs to some colorways from the comments that I personally like a lot. And I've definitely found a pattern in what I like right now. You'll see what I mean. But Drizzy Baller mentioned the free throw line 3s, which are very similar to the white cement that I think Binge Vintage and Peter mentioned. But I love the added touch of the sort of red line on the sole. Then you have the Win like 82 that Josh and Johnny mentioned. They're basically the Concords, but in a dark navy instead. And the French blue 12s that Merg mentioned. Again, they're basically the flu game shoe. I mean, it's the 12, it's the flu game shoe. But in white and blue. Apparently I have like a blue thing, a white and blue thing going on right now. But I think the silhouette of the 12 looks really good on the court. Speaking of having a blue thing, Moisinho mentioned the Travis Scott Fragment collab, which I love, especially in the lows. If I'm being picky, I wish the swoosh on both sides of the shoe were that cream color instead of having the black swoosh on the inside. Oh, and Cloud mentioned a gray and white colorway of Jordan 5s. And I don't know if you were talking about these. I'll have a picture up on screen. The wolf gray, but I do like these a lot. So you guys can tell this is all very biased around what I'm into right now. They all look very similar, and probably 6 months, 12 months down the road it would be a completely different story. I think I'm like, again, it's spring, I'm ready for summer, so the lighter shoes are doing it for me. But again, thank you all so much for, let me put this down. Putting this down on my white desk. I was going down this way. Thank you all so much for participating in the comments and chatting about your favorite Jordans. This is why I love our community, soon to be 20,000 strong. I really do need to get active in the Discord so we can regularly have these conversations, and maybe the playoffs are a good opportunity for that. So jump in on the Discord if you haven't already. We'll start being in there for the playoffs, NBA, NHL, the UFC going on right now. Really exciting summer for the UFC. And the semifinals of the Champions League. There's a lot to chat about right now. So hop in on the Discord. I'll get those convos going. And you can keep an eye out on the community tab as well for updates on that. And I'm going to leave you on that note. Thank you so much for hanging out with me. I'll see you in the next video.